For millions around the world, André Rieu is more than just a musician. He is the king of waltz, the man whose music has filled grand concert halls and open-air stages with joy, elegance, and timeless beauty. His orchestra has become a symbol of harmony, not only musically but emotionally, uniting generations with melodies that feel both nostalgic and eternal. Yet behind the grandeur of the stage, André has faced a devastating reality that no performance could ever mask. News has emerged that the beloved maestro has been handed a tragic diagnosis, one that could alter the course of his extraordinary life and career forever. For his family, especially his son, the pain has been almost unbearable. Fans have often seen André as indestructible, carrying himself with a charm and passion that seemed immune to age or struggle. But those closest to him have witnessed the difficult moments, the silence behind the curtain, the fatigue after performances, and the emotional battles that few outsiders ever knew about. And then came the moment that broke hearts. André's son, with a voice trembling with sorrow, finally said goodbye. It was a farewell not just to the father who raised him, but to the global icon who gave the world his soul through music. The words carried a weight that resonated far beyond his family, echoing through the hearts of millions of fans who have followed André's journey. This is not just the story of a musician's illness. It is the story of love, legacy, and the heartbreaking reality of saying goodbye to a man who seemed eternal. André Rieu was never just another musician. He was a force of nature who managed to transform the concert experience into something both intimate and grand. Born in Maastricht, the Netherlands in 1949, Rieu was raised in a family where music was not simply a hobby, but a way of life. His father, André Rieu Sr., was a conductor, and it was under his guidance that young André first picked up the violin. What began as a disciplined exercise soon blossomed into a passion that would shape his destiny. Throughout the decades, André Rieu carved out a unique place in the music world. Unlike many classical performers who remained rooted in formality, Rieu believed music should be shared, celebrated, and enjoyed by everyone. He broke barriers by transforming waltzes, once considered music of the past, into modern spectacles filled with laughter, joy, and a sense of connection. His Johann Strauss Orchestra, founded in 1987, became more than just a group of musicians. It became a family, bound together by Rieu's vision of bringing classical music to the masses. Yet while fans adored his artistry, those closest to him understood that behind the tuxedos and elegant bowing of the violin was a man who carried deep humility. At home, André was not the king of waltz, adored by millions, but a husband and a father who cherished quiet moments with his family. His two sons, Marc and Pierre, were his pride and joy. Though he spent countless nights touring the world, he always made sure to remain present in their lives, instilling in them not just a love for music, but also the values of loyalty and perseverance. Pierre, in particular, grew into more than just a son. He became his father's right hand in many ways. Over the years, Pierre took on management responsibilities, ensuring that his father's dream of spreading joy through music was handled with care and professionalism. Their bond was one of trust and respect, built on years of shared experiences and an unspoken understanding of what the orchestra truly meant, not just to audiences, but to the Rieu family itself. This close connection between father and son became even more evident when the news of André's tragic diagnosis began to circulate. For fans, it was a shock. For Pierre, it was a personal heartbreak. To see the man who seemed to carry endless energy, the man who could make thousands dance under the stars, suddenly facing an illness, was almost impossible to process. Those who knew the family say that Pierre became both protector and spokesperson, carefully navigating the balance between respecting his father's privacy and recognizing the public's need to know. The diagnosis marked a turning point. Concerts, once filled with effortless joy, now carried a different weight. Fans noticed André slowing down, though his passion never dimmed. Behind the scenes, his son often stepped in, offering quiet strength when André's body demanded rest. It was in those moments that the world truly saw the depth of their bond, not just father and son, but partners in both music and life. In many ways, André's legacy had already been secured long before his illness. His waltzes had reached every corner of the world, from the grandest halls of Europe to the open-air stages of South America and Asia. Yet for André, the greatest achievement was not in the size of his audience, but in the unity of his family. His son's loyalty and presence through the years became proof that his life's work was not only about music, but about the relationships built along the way. As whispers of his diagnosis began to grow louder, the focus shifted from his career achievements to the personal story unfolding behind closed doors. And at the center of that story stood his son, prepared to say goodbye to the father who had given him everything, not just a name, but a legacy of music, love, and resilience. For decades, André Rieu seemed unstoppable. He carried his violin with the energy of a man half his age, leading audiences on a journey of music and joy night after night. Fans often remarked that he looked ageless, his smile as warm and his movements as graceful as ever. Yet behind the glittering stages and thunderous applause, something far more fragile was taking shape. Subtle signs, moments of fatigue, pauses that lasted longer than expected, rehearsals cut shorter than usual, began to worry those who knew him best. At first, his family dismissed these moments as nothing more than the natural toll of age and an intense touring schedule. After all, André had been known to push himself beyond limits, often planning dozens of concerts across continents in a single year. But as time passed, the symptoms became impossible to ignore. There were days when he struggled to summon the strength to rehearse, and nights when his exhaustion overshadowed his joy for performance. His family, deeply concerned, encouraged him to seek medical advice. The results changed everything. André received a diagnosis that not only startled him but rippled through his family like a wave of grief. For the man who had spent his life bringing happiness to others, the harsh reality of his condition was a devastating blow. The details of his illness were kept private, out of respect for his wishes, but close friends and colleagues admitted that it was serious and would inevitably affect his future on stage. The news, when it first began to leak to the public, felt almost unreal. Fans who had grown up with his concerts could not imagine a world where André Rieu was no longer able to perform with the same boundless passion. Letters, messages, and prayers flooded in from across the globe. Admirers from South America to Japan expressed their sorrow and support, sharing memories of how his music had touched their lives, of weddings, anniversaries, and family gatherings where his waltzes had been the soundtrack to unforgettable moments. But for his family, especially his son Pierre, the reality was even harder. It wasn't just about a diagnosis. It was about watching a father, the pillar of strength, the eternal optimist, face the fragility of his own health. Pierre found himself in the unenviable position of being both son and manager, balancing his personal grief with the professional responsibility of guiding his father's orchestra through uncertain times. Every decision, from concert schedules to public statements, had to be handled with sensitivity. André, true to his character, met the situation with remarkable courage. Those close to him say he never once complained or expressed anger. Instead, he worried about disappointing his fans and letting down the musicians who had stood by him for decades. His dedication to others, even in the midst of his own suffering, revealed the depth of his character. Still, even the strongest spirits cannot defy the realities of illness, and as time went on, it became increasingly clear that he would need to step back. The diagnosis not only marked a turning point for his career, but also drew his family closer together. His wife, children, and grandchildren became his greatest source of comfort, reminding him daily of the love that had always surrounded him. For Pierre, every day became a chance to repay his father for the years of guidance, laughter, and music they had shared. The conversations grew more emotional, the moments more treasured, as both father and son faced the possibility of goodbye. As the world waited for updates, André's family quietly shouldered the burden of grief, united in their determination to make whatever time remained as meaningful as possible. The man who had given the world beauty, through music, was now being carried by the strength of the very family who had always been his hidden treasure. When news of André Rieu's declining health began to circulate, Fans around the world clung to hope that the beloved maestro would somehow defy the odds. For decades, André had seemed untouchable, a man whose passion and energy transcended time. But while admirers prayed for a miracle, his family faced the difficult reality behind closed doors. Among them, his son Pierre carried perhaps the heaviest burden. He was not only the child who adored his father, but also the man who stood closest to him in both life and work. For years, Pierre had served as the managing force behind the Johann Strauss Orchestra, making sure that every concert, every tour, and every recording reflected his father's vision. To the outside world, he was the quiet presence in the background, ensuring that André's artistry could shine uninterrupted. But in truth, he was much more. He was a son who had grown up watching his father's extraordinary dedication, and now he was a man struggling with the painful reality that this chapter of their journey was drawing to a close. Those who witnessed Pierre during this time described him as steady but deeply emotional. His love for his father was evident in every decision he made, from protecting André's privacy to offering gentle reassurances when the maestro himself felt uncertain. Yet no amount of strength could prepare him for the moment when he had to say goodbye. In a deeply moving statement, Pierre expressed what so many felt but could not put into words. He spoke of gratitude for the music, for the joy, and for the countless lives his father had touched. But beneath those words lay an unmistakable sorrow, the kind only a son could feel when faced with the reality of losing his father. Witnesses say that André, ever the optimist, tried to comfort his family more than himself. He told Pierre not to dwell on sadness, but to carry forward the music, the orchestra, and the dream they had built together. It was in that moment that the depth of their bond became painfully clear. This was not just a father passing down a legacy, it was a father entrusting his very soul to his son. Pierre's farewell was not only personal, but symbolic, representing the handover of a lifetime's work from one generation to the next. Fans who heard Pierre's words felt an almost immediate connection. For many, it was as though they too were part of the family, grieving alongside him. Social media was flooded with messages of support, with fans from across the globe sharing how André's music had carried them through difficult times, brought joy to their weddings, or even offered comfort during their own losses. In a way, Pierre's farewell gave millions of people permission to grieve, to acknowledge that the man who had filled their lives with beauty was now facing his own heartbreaking battle. But beyond the sadness, there was something profoundly inspiring in the way Pierre spoke. He did not frame his father's story as one of tragedy alone, but as a testament to resilience, passion, and love. His farewell was laced with hope, reminding fans that André's music, legacy, and spirit would live on long after the final bow. For those listening, it felt less like an ending and more like a reminder that the gift of music is eternal. Still, the raw emotion of the moment could not be overlooked. The sight of a son saying goodbye to his father, while the world listened, was a powerful reminder of the fragility of life. André Rieu, who had once seemed larger than life, was revealed as human, vulnerable, and deeply loved. And Pierre's farewell became the echo of every child who has ever had to let go of a parent, a universal heartbreak amplified by the fame and legacy of the man in question. As André Rieu's diagnosis became public knowledge and his son's farewell touched hearts across the globe, the question that lingered in everyone's mind was, what happens now? For decades, André had not only led the Johann Strauss Orchestra, but had been its very soul. His presence on stage was magnetic, his passion for music contagious, and his belief in the power of the waltz unwavering. Without him, the orchestra seemed unimaginable. And yet, as history often shows, true legacies do not end, they evolve. The orchestra, under André's guidance, was never just a collection of musicians. It was a family. Many of the players had been with him for decades, sharing countless tours, late-night rehearsals, and moments of triumph. They laughed together, cried together, and grew into something far greater than a professional ensemble. Now, in the face of this painful chapter, the musicians stood united. They knew that continuing the work André had dedicated his life to was not just a duty, It was a tribute. At the center of this transition stood Pierre, his son. Having worked side by side with his father for years, Pierre understood the heartbeat of the orchestra better than anyone. While saying goodbye was the hardest thing he had ever done, he also knew that his father's wish was clear. The music must go on. And so Pierre began taking steps to ensure that André's dream would not fade away. Whether it meant continuing tours in his honor, releasing unreleased recordings, or creating new performances inspired by his father's vision, Pierre was determined that the world would keep dancing to the music of André Rieu. For fans, the diagnosis was heartbreaking, but it also brought a wave of appreciation that perhaps André himself had never fully realized. Messages poured in from every continent, stories of couples who had their first dance to his waltzes, families who had made his concerts annual traditions, and individuals who found healing in his music during life's darkest moments. It became clear that André Rieu's influence extended far beyond the stage. He had shaped the emotional soundtrack of millions of lives. In interviews, close friends and colleagues described André as a man who never measured success by fame or money, but by the joy he could bring to others. Even as his health declined, he reminded his loved ones that the true purpose of music was connection. This philosophy is perhaps the greatest gift he leaves behind, a reminder that while human life is fragile, art is eternal. For his family, the future is now about cherishing each remaining moment. André continues to share quiet days with his loved ones, surrounded by the laughter of grandchildren and the comfort of those who mean the most. Calmer now than in the years of constant touring, his home has become a place of reflection, love, and peace. And though the shadow of illness looms large, his resilience and optimism remain an inspiration. To the world, André Rieu will always be the king of waltz, the man who made classical music accessible, joyful, and unforgettable. To his family, he is a husband, a father, and a grandfather whose warmth extends far beyond the stage lights. And to Pierre, his son who had to say a painful farewell, André is not just a legend, but a father whose love and wisdom will guide him forever. Though the final notes of André's live performances may be drawing near, his music will continue to echo across time. Every waltz, every bow of the violin, every orchestra that carries forward his vision will remind the world of a man who turned music into a celebration of life itself. And in that sense, André Rieu will never truly say goodbye. His legacy will live on in every heart that beats to the rhythm of his song.